Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into a really interesting idea.
Yeah, it's from an audio recording we looked at.
Right, this concept that no intellect means no concerns. It sounds kind of counterintuitive at first.
It definitely does. The goal here is to unpack that, see how this recording links intellect, good versus bad, and, well, why we worry.
Okay, so the core idea seems to be that intellect itself creates divisions.
Exactly. The recording posits that our intellect's job, like separating things out, is what sets up this fundamental split between good and bad.
And that split is where concerns come from.
That's the argument. If that separation sort of dissolves, the idea is that worries vanish too. It's pretty intriguing for anyone interested in, how our minds work.
So when they say intellect, it's not just smarts or IQ.
No, not really. It's more about the function of distinguishing. The recording specifically mentions separating something from nothing.
Ah, okay, and that basic separation then expands.
Into separating good from bad, yeah.
Okay, I think I'm following. And how does self-will fit into this?
Well, the recording argues that once you have that separation, you inevitably develop preferences. You will something over nothing, or good over bad.
So self-will is like the engine driving those preferences.
Pretty much. It stems directly from seeing things as separate. And the recording says this is the direct cause of our experience of good and bad.
So no intellectual separation.
Means no self-will, and therefore no good-bad distinction as we usually know it.
Which leads to that other idea mentioned. All is really one.
Exactly. If the intellect isn't creating these divisions, you perceive this underlying unity.
Like everything's connected.
Yeah, the recording suggests that in that state, the whole concept of good versus bad kind of falls away because it's all part of the same whole. And if everything is fundamentally truly good in that sense,
Then there's nothing to be concerned about.
right, the basis for worry just disappears.
Okay, but the recording also mentioned concerns arise when the intellect is not whole. What does that mean exactly?
Think of not whole as being stuck in those separations, rigidly seeing things as either something or nothing, good or bad.
Instead of seeing the connection.
Right. A whole intellect, especially at what the recording calls its edge, grasps the unity, the idea that opposites are actually linked. Concerns thrive in that rigid, separated state.
Okay. What about potential misunderstandings? Like someone with a severe mental illness. Wouldn't they lack concerns by this logic?
That's a good question. The recording actually addresses this. It argues that even if someone's reasoning is different, they still operate from their own internal will.
Meaning they still have their own version of preferences and aversions.
Exactly. So even if their concerns aren't typical, they still exist within their own framework, driven by that will. It's not the same as having no concerns.
Okay, that clarifies things. And spirituality. Many people think spiritual paths lead to no worries.
Yeah, the recording makes a subtle point there too. It suggests that while spirituality might change what you're concerned about,
Like shifting focus from material things to, say, enlightenment.
precisely, but as long as there's still a form of self-will operating even a spiritual will, like wanting enlightenment over ignorance, then concerns in some form can still exist.
So it's not an automatic get-out-of-concern-free card.
Apparently not. According to this perspective, it always circles back to that intellectual separation and the resulting will.
Which brings us back to the edge of intellect. What is that state?
It's described as this sort of threshold, either where the intellect hasn't fully developed its dividing function yet, or maybe where it transcends it.
Like pre-separation or post-separation?
Kind of. At this edge, the recording claims something and nothing unify.
And that dissolves self-will.
Yes. And with it, the concepts of what it calls false good and false bad, the ones based on separation, this leads to true good and no concerns.
Wow, okay. So wrapping this up then.
Yeah.
This deep dive basically explored the idea that our intellect's function of making distinctions is perhaps the root of worry.
Yeah, by creating that initial separation between something and nothing, it lays the foundation.
And the solution presented is this state of wholeness, or reaching the edge of intellect, where separation dissolves into unity.
Leading to potentially a concern-free state perceived as truly good.
It definitely gives you something to think about.
For sure. And maybe a final thought for our listeners. Just consider how much we constantly categorize and label things every day.
Yeah.
Could that very mental habit, distinguishing this from that, actually create the potential for dissatisfaction or worry?
Like the act itself sets up the conflict.
Maybe. What if focusing more on interconnectedness rather than difference could shift how we even define what a concern is? Something to mull over.